Hey all, in the constant quest for finding distros, just when I thought I'd seen them all, at least with Arch, I came across CachyOS. What, what is CachyOS, you might ask? Well, first glances, it's essentially another Arch-based distro that also uses Calamares, has its own fork of Libra Wolf, themes, different Linux kernels, the option to choose, or different forks of it, security, etc. All of that. So I first came across this on SourceForge accidentally, and when you look at the website, main website, doesn't give you really much info. So, for example, let's say I want to find out more about kernel support. There's no option to click on, and let's say I want to learn more about the awesome themes. Oh, the page isn't found. And if you continue to go down here to learn more about the kernels, it takes you back to the home page. So I thought, hey, maybe this has been abandoned. Turns out, after looking at SourceForge, it's not. So it seems like very recently this distro has perfected, or at least gotten a working Gui installer, from what I've been reading on their forums, where in the past you would normally use the CLI installer, and it gives you a whole info on their SourceForge page about the different Linux kernels they're using. They have the CachyOS Kernel Manager, Package Manager, you name it, this distro has it, and by the looks of it, it does seem like if you install it with a custom kernel, you can actually use ZFS as a file system format as well. So this all looks pretty cool, pretty self-explanatory. And then looking at the installer files here, it was a little bit difficult to find the right one because you'll see there's KDE, there's GNOME, and when you check, you'll see the latest KDE version called System Deboot. Interesting name, file name. It was on the 12th of June. So that was the first version I've tried to download, and I'm gonna be quite honest with you. When I was preparing for this review, I actually first try usually to install these distros behind the scenes, just so that if there's any bugs or gotchas, I don't have to waste your time watching this video. However, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't get this OS installed, and I'm gonna show you why. Before I go to that step, here's the wiki. Now, if you look at this wiki and you say, "Hey, gosh, this thing looks similar." No, it does, and let's be honest, you know, most instances of Wiki.js will look similar. But I did notice something very interesting here. If I look at Garuda Linux and their wiki, let's wait for their wiki to load. Similar. I mean, it's obviously, different distros, different wiki, but, definitely must admit, can't blame a person for thinking that the one might have inspired the other one. I mean, if you look at it quickly without realizing it, there's some similarity. Of course, the Garuda one has a lot more information in it, and what I take is that CachyOS are still busy building their OS up. So, the forum, really not too much going on the forum here. I do see some of the developers and heads up and respect do seem to be answering some questions that are asked by some of the users. So that's really, really nice to see. And not really much else on that page except one of the posts, I take it from the admins, gave a whole list of additional improvements and updates of the last install. And from what I've been able to read and put together out of some of these posts, previously in the past, a person would have to use a CLI installer to get things operational. Why CachyOS? So CachyOS uses Linux CachyOS. And if you're like me, you might wonder, what's Linux CachyOS? Anyway, it is standard Linux kernel with a scheduler and other improvements. So essentially, this OS, not only does it have other additional kernels you can choose from, but they default for Linux CachyOS. Basically uses the board scheduler and has all these different features added, removed to it to tweak it for, I would assume, for better performance and usage. I have to be honest with you, I'm not personally a big user of different kernels, although I generally do tend to use the Zen kernel just for some of my own performance. So I can either comment what this is like, but I'm sure there's a viewer out there that knows better. Okay, so after looking at these, here, not often I spend a lot of time, but really you don't get too much info from the site. Let's look at getting this up and running, and I want to show you this. So let me just add a new install quickly. Here. So I'm just going to choose this CachyOS latest system deboot. Right. Doesn't really make a difference too much. There is also another offline installer with GNOME as well. But I couldn't get that. I mean, I can get them to boot, but I just can't get them installed. And just for the record, I also tried using a virtual box in case it was an issue with KVM, but it definitely wasn't. CachyOS 1. And here it is. So, instantly looking at it, like most of these type of distros, NVIDIA drivers, if you're using or you have NVIDIA hardware and you want to use the proprietary drivers, or everything else, just the normal defaults. So far from what I've seen of this OS is definitely quite ambitious and quite interesting, and I'm actually very sad I haven't been able to get it installed. And even, in a virtual machine environment, it still looks interesting. So let this load. It shouldn't take too much longer because it is pretty quick. Speed up screen. And even though they offer different installs, or should I say you can get the offline or the online installer. So as I mentioned, there's a GNOME offline installer, a KDE offline installer, and from the online installers, which I'm going to show you now, you can choose other environments. From what I've read with the documentation and all the info in all these different places, it seems like it's the most tweaked for KDE, but it's not the only one. Again, like a lot of these distros these days, a welcome screen and all of this basic info over here as well. Let's first fix the screen resolution. Again, since it is done via the GUI, I'll use the GUI here to just configure it slightly. And why can't I find... I'll just type in settings, probably going to be easier. Quick settings, advanced network config, desktop, quick settings. Okay, normal KDE settings page. Let's go to display and put this to a more acceptable resolution. Nice and quick. So I definitely like the overall theme. I've definitely kept to the whole blue thing. So again, from a live standpoint, memory. Okay, I can't use it with that option here. So you can see just by booting like this, it's at 673 megs. memory, which is really not bad. And something else, I just want to check if we can etc Pac-Man, because this for me is always interesting to look at with these type of distros. So you can see here, they have their own repo, the CachyOS repo, which is a mirror list, and a couple of pre-built packages are in there as well. Couldn't find too much info about that online. I did see one or two Reddit threads, but really not much in there. Then they use core, extra, community, and multi-lib, so all of those are enabled by default. So it's basically normal Arch plus their own repo, which would have, I take it, their customized kernels. Anyway, so let's just launch an installer. I'm going to do the online. Both of them will load calamari in the beginning. So here we go. I'm going to say next. That's fine. I'm not really too worried about the regional installer. Erase disk. Check here. BTFS, F2S, XFS, ZFS. So let's say I was to choose ZFS. And by the way, when I've had the installation fail right at the end with calamaris, I've tried it on a few attempts, different file systems, so that doesn't seem to make any difference. For this, I'm just going to choose ZFS. I'm going to go next, and here you can see options: no desktop, plasma, cutefish, XFC4, the different window managers, etc. I'm just going to choose plasma desktop because it's the one that's come with this. Then here is very interesting. So if you look at their base development packages here, by network, already everything's pre-set up, very similar to some other Arch-based distros like Arcos, another example here. So in that case, because we chose ZFS, one would actually have to change a different kernel, which would be nice if it automatically selected that, but I guess if you choose a normal kernel, it doesn't matter. So if I was to look at CachyOS kernels, right, you don't see anything else here that talks about ZFS, so you must choose one of these under ZFS. So, you know what, I'm just going to choose one of these, and let's just do that. Okay, and then of course, for the different environments, if people are going to install them, gaming meta, and it just tells you the CachyOS gaming meta. And accessibility of support tools, that's next. Full name, of course, my name is Gosh, that's fine. Going to type in an extremely secure password. Going to use the same for the admin account. Partitioning will be automatic, and we'll tell it to install now, and you can immediately see here it gives you a little bit more info about CachyOS. So, thoughts. Well, it's very difficult to give thoughts on something that you've struggled to get installed for whatever reason, and having the documentation and the website and everything in so many different places is a little bit interesting. So, I like the potential of the distro and what they're trying to do. They definitely seem to be for customizations and bringing customizations to a user without, having to spend hours and hours and hours upon doing it. Because, I mean, let's be honest, on any Arch install, you could make these changes yourself. You could install your different kernels yourself. You don't have to use something like this. I did see that one of their tools, the Kernel Manager, you can manually select some of the features you want yourself. So you can essentially take a kernel, choose which kernel you want, and change the features that you would like to use. Which, if that actually works, or could see it working, I think it's absolutely awesome. Especially for people that want to turn on and off unnecessary features for their hardware. Great way of doing it. I'd really, really like to see everything be more combined on this distro. So go to one web page, have the download links that make sense there instead of duplicates, have a installer that really works. Again, I'm not saying it's the distro. Maybe there's something on my hardware doesn't like it's possible. But really, 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 really great. You know, this distro kind of reminds me, if you were to take, let me think. Let's say you were to take Garuda, and you were to take Arca, and just throw a dash of Storm OS in there, and you were to have a brand new OS come out, it would be those. Personal opinion. So, also interestingly enough, of course, before I forget, you'll see this Pacman log starts in the background. And what it's doing right now, it is busy downloading. And here is a install log. So literally in the background, if you're a new user and you're not used to terminal screens, this might freak you out a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this, but I see it's actually busy installing all of these optional dependencies. I just want to see if it's going to error out immediately now, or if otherwise I need to pause if you don't come back. So while it's busy installing various packages there. So on the CLI installer, which I saw was about 3 months old, also on the page, I found a video online. Someone started the video and it immediately starts their custom installation. Of course, ironically, when I tried it, well, it loaded automatically DWM Window Manager instead of a text installer. So I must tell you, if you're looking for text installer to start and suddenly a random Window Manager starts up, it was very bizarre. And really didn't look anything like the other previous video I'd seen online of how someone got this installed. So a little bit interesting or concerning. I suspect that just some of their documentation videos aren't up to date. Again, of course, the install log, if I hit this little button here, it's the same thing. And you can see it is still busy downloading. So I just want to see how many packages are here to download. Okay, well, I can't actually see that. We did see earlier. Anyway, well, let's make the most of this. So, default graphics on the disk, image viewer. They also have the Cachy browser, which is, guess, Cachy browser is just a install of it's Firefox fork of LibreWolf, which has been recustomized as Cachy browser with a couple of additional plugins added to it. I'll show you those plugins now. I see it's just busy doing a little bit more of an install here. It would be great if this works today, honestly. Would really like that personally. I did click on Cachy browser, didn't I? It's because I need to be a bit more patient. Come on. Cachy browser comes with Dark Reader pre-installed, Canvas Blocker, Stealth Mode, Maximum Protection installed. It's an add-on, I take it. But as you see here, any moment, you'll see it's just one of the latest versions, and it's just Firefox or LibreWolf with some additional extensions and settings that have been changed. Okay, here. Okay, it's busy doing probing, updating, installing. Okay, so now this is generally where I start run into issues. Just after this point, it's usually when it has to do with the bootloader. For some reason. I haven't contacted the developers yet, but if it falls over again now, I'm actually going to do that. Here we go. Every single time it's the same error. As you can see, it's always these errors in the grub install, and as I said, no matter how I try to install it, even if I use offline installer, anything, manual partition, everything before the time, I keep getting this error, which is a real pity. And then you hit done, right? And you scroll down here, there's nothing else. Another install log. And interestingly, if you go check here, Pacman, it tells you couldn't find the EFI system partition. And the loader doesn't exist, interestingly. And by the way, I've manually before created it with different settings to that, and it's the same thing. And yeah, this pretty much is where I'm going to end this video. You know, I hope to do a follow-up at some point so I can, get this working. Let's just check on the Kernel Manager, see what option it gives you here. Okay, that's pretty cool. So once this, if you've got this installed, you'll see with the Kernel Manager different options, LTO optimized, stable, and as I briefly mentioned earlier, you can choose a kernel, and then you can even say configure, and you can actually choose some of these options that are configurable before it executes and installs it, which I think is actually pretty cool. If you don't want to use a custom kernel, you can use the traditional Linux or Zen or hardened to LTS kernels. But yeah, thanks everyone for watching. That's a wrap from me for now. And have a great day further. Bye for now.